I will set the zeitgeist straight.
The movie has too much of the cast in it.
Man, I'm saddled with Jeff Goldblum, the world's most uncharismatic actor.
But it has no poetry.
That's not what this is about.
The problem was when the hero started facing adversity.
Get off your soapbox, Laura Dern.
I want to square off on this guy at a dinner party.
The music was thick.
So far, you have not dazzled me. I'm just letting you know. Hey everybody, welcome to Off the Mark, good chat on bad takes of great movies. I'm Dave Columbo.
I'm Mick Andrews.
Yeah, so on this podcast, we like to find the greatest movies ever made, and we like to find the people that did not think that they were the greatest movies that were ever made.
Respectful dissents in history.
Yeah, that are usually very respectfully worded, you know, like, it's just, it wasn't my cup of tea.
I'm sure it'll make money.
Yeah, that's the default line, which I didn't get in any of these, but I'm totally sure someone said. Today we're going to be covering The Wizard of Oz. Now, like, let's be clear, like, this is a bit of a departure for us. I realize
it's not directed by Steven Spielberg.
Yeah, we needed like my list is literally like, we'll do Close Encounters, and then we'll do Hook, and then we'll do, you know. So I know that we needed to branch out a little bit, and like, I mean, literally another one that I wanted to do very soon was Alien, which is literally the thing in space. So I was like, let's try to like broaden our horizons. And this is interesting because it's a very different time. And you know, you want to say that even what we just did with Star Wars, like, wow, Star Wars has been around in the lexicon for so long. Can you even imagine a time before Darth Vader? And it's like, no, like, let's do one where it's like, this is literally the fabric of Hollywood.
It's
required
what people
viewing.
think of when they think of great movies.
Right.
It's iconic. I'm pretty sure, I forget who deemed it this. I think the AFI, the Film Institute, but somebody somewhere along the lines has dubbed this the most viewed movie of all time.
Absolutely.
Which, set aside box office success, if you want to talk about what is the true measure of the greatest piece of art, it is who has taken it in the most. Or what piece has been, you know, that's got to be on anyone's list of like how you measure greatness. And
Laura has a great joke where she talks about like being a nanny, and like with kids movies, you never see the end. You just watch the beginning over and over. So it's like she doesn't know, like, did Elsa let it go? I don't even know. like who's to say? Like, I never got that far. And I would definitely put Wizard of Oz up there as like, not only is it a classic, it is a children's movie, which immediately multiplies how many times people have watched it by a million, you know?
Yeah, it's just, in terms of like raw viewings, you also got to bear in mind all of the amount of time that it's spent in syndication on TV, like reruns, all that kind of stuff.
It was re-released in 1949, 1955. These are all in theaters. 1989, 1998, 2002, 2006. Like, even just the re-releases in theaters is like, let. And I went back and watched a little bit. I didn't watch the whole thing, but I watched a little bit of it to like prepare, because I honestly hadn't seen it in years. And even though I can't think of the last time I watched it, especially as an adult, every line was ingrained almost to an absurd degree in my body. Like, even more so than like a Jurassic Park or like a Back to the Future for me, where it's like those are just in my head. This is like, oh, no, Dave, you must have watched this 1,000 times before you were even creating memories.
Right.
It's deeper. It's even deeper than anything else.
It's a part of your psyche. It's like a psychological developmental thing that exists in people. Like, and yeah, that's totally true. I mean, that's definitely true of me. I have memories. Some of my earliest memories as a kid are at my, grandparents' house watching this, and they watched it when they were kids, like,
yeah.
So, it's a cornerstone of Americana. It's what people think of when they think of old Hollywood, and the lore from this movie, like the behind the scenes stuff, about this movie is legendary too.
Well, that's
So
something we should definitely talk about. I mean, I know that when we talk about the greatest movies ever made, I don't think anybody thinks that we mean the movies where everybody involved was a paragon of virtue and it was all made for the right reasons within the laws of the time. Like, of course, we're talking about it within the perspective of the finished product. Like Trevor said with Star Wars, a perfect movie is a movie that achieves what it set out to do. And Wizard of Oz absolutely does that. It's just when you read about the history, it is so hard to separate. You know, I'm glad I saw it and appreciated it as a kid a million times so that it was only by an adult where I'm like, Toto made more than the Munchkins? Okay, that affects
yeah, that's
my,
rough.
you know, and again, I don't know how many of those, like the movie's been around so long, I don't know how many of those stories are apocryphal or even worse than what the legend is, you know, how Judy Garland was treated, what they did, like it's just, like the injuries on set, it's just crazy.
I heard that the scene where Dorothy and the Cowardly Lion fall asleep in the poppy fields, the material that they use for snow is just 100% asbestos. It's just, even though at this point in time they already knew asbestos wasn't good for you.
It's just, doesn't that sound like you're doing an improv and someone's like, you know, be an old-timey Hollywood stagehand, and you're just like, I'll tell you what we need, asbestos. like there's no...
Breathe it in, Dorothy. It shines on camera.
What
like,
is the worst thing? Or like, you know,
yeah.
But even not even the stories that I've heard, but because I know shit like that, when you see the scene when she's running into the house when the twister's coming and the window breaks off of the door of the wall and hits Dorothy and like knocks her silly, I know for a fact that wasn't done safely. I don't need to hear that story and know that, like, you know, like
the title of stunt coordinator did not exist in 1939.
And so because I know all of the stories that I do know, hearing that, I'm like, I bet that was like, now this is going to come off and hit you. Now react. Yeah. And we're rolling.
I also don't even buy that they were that courteous. I think they might have pulled a Hans Gruber on Judy Garland and went on 2 instead of 3. You know what I mean? In order to get a real reaction.
That's what I do with this podcast. I'm like, are we ready to roll? And we're rolling. You know, like that's when you hear some of these reviews of what they say about Judy Garland. You know, when you know what she went through in the shooting, how old she was. And let's be honest.
16. She was 16 years old.
16. She's crushing it. For a child actor in 1939, this is what always drives me crazy is that they'll be like, oh, she's really like chewing the scenery. Have you looked at the adults in this movie? Or any movie from 1939?
Yeah.
Like, everyone's like, hey, there, see? How we doing? What's going on? Oh, I don't know. Like,
I mean,
everybody's doing that.
Yeah, I like her like, I don't find she chews the scenery nearly as much as the guy at the Emerald City who goes, now that's a horse of a different color. Like, that guy is really, like, he's like, I've got 2 lines and I'm going to knock them both out of the park. Like,
yeah. I mean,
but
it's
she's amazing in this movie. She's incredible,
and the voice. I mean, it's really amazing, and it was the first example to me when I was a kid because I watched it and thought like, what a beautiful story, what an amazing actor, what an incredible voice. This is a great fun musical, and then you hear all of the horrible behind the scenes stuff, and you're like, oh. Not that it is necessarily worth it, but it was the first example to me of seeing as a child, beautiful art can be made out of chaos and pain and anger. And it taught me to not necessarily think that something that is beautiful on screen or a beautiful song or a beautiful painting necessarily had a beautiful creation process.
There's some other stuff that we should say about the behind the scenes stuff, because I mean, when you think of evil as a child, you picture the Wicked Witch of the West. She is like the quintessential kind of, she struck fear in kids' hearts for decades. In reality, Margaret Hamilton is famously considered an incredibly nice person, to the point where Judy Garland had trouble acting scared around her in scenes because she's such a lovely person. And if anyone is interested, they should look up the episode of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood where
Yep.
she came on, put on the costume, and explained to American children that witches are make believe, and that we sometimes pretend to be scary so that we can show how other people can be brave and that kind of stuff. And it's just what an
Literally,
amazingly lovely person that I
literally
feel
gives
like,
me chills.
yeah, her
Yeah.
and her legacy, is this iconic character, of course, but like I think that, when you hear the stories of her in the back, like, behind the scenes, and how lovely she was to everybody on set, and how kind she was to this 16-year-old girl who was carrying this movie on her back.
Yeah.
I think that should always be part of a conversation, is, when you hear, you know, she will forever be seen as a wicked person, but she was incredibly nice and kind.
Have
So.
you ever heard of the Sesame Street legend?
No, what's that?
This is my favorite thing in the world. My favorite thing in the world, more than anything else, is lost media. And apparently there was it is the holy grail of lost media, a missing Sesame Street episode where she reprises her role as the witch. And it does a thing where like her broom drops into Sesame Street and like Big Bird gets it and she's trying to get her broom back. And apparently, very much like the Mr. Rogers Neighborhood, she like spends the episode, it talks about bullying and what it means to be like mean and stuff like that. But apparently it wasn't handled nearly as well and scared the shit out of children.
Oh, no.
So it rated so poorly that they removed it. They played it once and then removed it from like all syndication, all DVD releases. And there was only, for years, there was only like a couple of weird publicity stills of her, in her old age, dressed like, back as the Wicked Witch of the West.
Yeah.
And it's so funny because like, here she is, who was like, she was 36 when she did Wicked Witch in the movie. And so here she is much later in life in clearly the 70s, like everyone's got bell bottoms. It's just weird to see the Wicked Witch of the West in a
groovy.
Yeah,
the Wicked Witch
like,
is here.
Hey lady, sit on it, like whatever. But apparently they recently found the full episode. For years it was like this holy grail where people only had like grainy photos of her on set. But now, like,
smokes.
they actually
They found
it, and you can watch it online for free in full HD, and it is really weird, and it's not like
Did she do like the green face makeup and all that stuff?
I remember that, but I don't know for sure.
Okay.
But it cracks me up because it's like it just wasn't handled as well as the Mr. Rogers. Mr. Rogers was like, "Hey kids, this isn't real. Let's talk about it."
This is my friend Margaret, is I think how he introduces her.
But the Sesame Street episode is like, like, hey, here's a witch who drops a boom. It's like there's like a story. Like she drops her broom into Sesame Street. Now, what do you do to get your broom back? How would a witch mess with Big Bird? It's just very strange.
Right.
So let's talk about it. So August 25th. 1939. Hitler was about to get his bell rung. Like, we try to do like pop culture,
yeah,
what was
Jesus
going on.
Christ.
Like, what do we do for pop culture for this? Like, I wanted to look at what other movies were out around the time, but like, what's the point? It would just be like Cat's Meow, followed by Ducky Shincracker, followed by 8 to the Bar. Like all of these weird 1930s movies that nobody would have, It had a budget of nearly $3 million and made $25 million. Here's the thing. I want my kids to see this movie on VHS because I just put it on HBO Max, and I tell you what, HD does not do this movie any favors. The very clearly painted backdrop, like edge of the set, is so visible now.
Oh, it's
When I was a kid,
it's too clean.
Yeah. When I was a kid, the Yellow Brick Road goes on forever, like literally into rolling hills, like into the countryside. Watching it on HBO Max in full HD, it's like a Looney Tunes painting on the side of a wall.
Yeah.
And you watch Judy Garland literally go like, off to see the wonderful Wizard of Oz, walking, and we're fading out right before she hits the edge of the
Right,
wall.
she walks into a wall. Oh boy.
Every scene looks like the same, like cafeteria hanger that they shot the same of this. It's really hard to watch because you're like, that's just a painting. Like it's tough.
I heard that the only exterior shots are in the entire movie. The only actual like real world shots are the sky at the beginning of the movie. Everything else is inside.
Yeah. Yeah, like why can't you can't put a Kansas house outside? You can't film.
It's all a set.
Yeah.
Nope. It's all a studio set.
Yeah, and it's all very like literally like, sponge painting. It's very abstract. It's just kind of it's very tough. It's very weird. So let's jump into this first review here.
Cool.
This is ridiculous. This is from the New Yorker. This one's called The Wizard of Hollywood. MGM's Technicolor production of The Wizard of Oz displays no trace of good taste, imagination, or ingenuity.
I already hate this. I already hate
That's the
you
title.
for doing this to me.
Yeah. I don't know if I want to do the absurd Atlantic accent for the whole thing, but it's just so hard to read writing from the 30s and not, instantly throw in. Here we go. Fantasy is still Walt Disney's undisputed domain. This was forcibly borne in on me as I sat cringing before MGM's Technicolor production of The Wizard of Oz, which displays no trace of imagination, good taste, or ingenuity. Cringing. I will rest my case against The Wizard of Oz on one line of dialogue. It occurs in a scene in which the Wicked Witch is trying to persuade Dorothy, the little girl from Kansas, to part with her pair of magic slippers.
Can we just for a sec, like, I'm going to base my entire opinion of this movie on one line of dialogue. Like, sure, that's how you evaluate movies.
Right, but also, this better be a hell of a clunky line that you're about to mention, because it destroys The Wizard of Oz for you.
The whole movie is done, Is this the first? Can we just stop? Because they referenced the Technicolor. Is this the first color movie? Am I misremembering that? There was a technical achievement here in terms of like the vibrancy of the color. Like because the stories you hear of people who watch it, like who watched it when it came out, are like people were blown away at the like how the color pops in this movie. Which it does. I think it does. I think it still does when you. Especially juxtaposing the kind of sepia of the first 10-15 minutes of it. Anyway, sorry, continue.
Little weird piece of trivia, but do you know that whole sepia story with the painting, them painting the set?
No.
When she opens the door, that's already in color. The inside of the cabin is in color, but they painted it all sepia and used a double who is dressed in those tones so that opening the door into the Technicolor beautiful set looks like an awesome camera trick, but it's really just...
What a fun... Oh, that's great.
But again, I bet it was like, here's some brown paint. Go over in the corner.
I bet they covered her in lead-based paint in order to get it done.
Horrible stuff to make this beautiful shot.
Yeah.
Okay, so The Wizard of Oz, I will rest my case against The Wizard of Oz on one line of dialogue. It occurs in a scene in which the Wicked Witch is trying to persuade Dorothy, the little girl from Kansas. Are you trying to think of what line it is that totally ruins the movie?
I am,
I know we all are. We're all thinking, what line could it possibly be? To part with a pair of magic slippers. The Good Witch interrupts them, warning Dorothy not to give up the slippers, whereupon the Wicked Witch snarls, "You keep out of this." Well, there it is. Either you believe witches talk like that or you don't. I don't. Since The Wizard of Oz is full of stuff as bad as that or worse, I say it's a stinkeroo.
No, fuck off. It doesn't say stinkeroo.
It's a stinkeroo. If you asked me to write what I think they were thinking.
Oh my God.
You keep out of this.
That's not the kind of thing a witch would say. What would a witch say? You keep out of this.
Was you keep out of this some like hip 30s slang that clearly didn't fit in a fantasy? Like, was it like, did nobody
Oh my
say
God,
you
you
keep
think
out
that's
of
what
this?
it is? That it's
That
too
has to
cool
be.
for a witch to say, but like because it's almost 100 years since this movie's been made, it's
There's
now
no other explanation. That like 2 years before that in some movie, some cool cat said, "Hey, you keep out of this," and everyone was like, "Hey, that's the new thing."
wow.
Like,
That's some.
it must
Oh
be,
my
because there's no
God.
way a witch saying "you keep out of this" is the issue.
I thought it was going to be something like super schmaltzy, something like "There's no place like home," or like oh my God, you keep out of this is would not have remembered that was a line simply because that's so
I
innocuous
mean,
as far as
there's also talking lions saying "I don't have courage." Like, if the bar is a witch wouldn't say "you keep out of this." At one
oh
point,
my God, what a
there's a scarecrow with a gun. So what are you talking about?
to hang your entire hat, like your entire perception of this movie on "you keep out of this." And that's probably at the point where Glinda and the Wicked Witch of the West are in the same scene. So that's got to be Munchkin Land, I'd
Yeah.
imagine, which means that this is about ballparking like 20 minutes into the movie. We're still like kind of like setting off on the actual adventure. To write off a movie of this magnitude and just be like, I'm out.
I'm out.
Like, I'm out. You lost me at "you keep out of this."
If I'm correct, this is after we're introduced to the Lollipop Guild. They're I mean, you're in Munchkin Land.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, all of that is fine.
All
That
of
I buy.
that I buy,
Yeah.
but you
Yeah.
keep out of it. You keep out of
That's
this.
where because that's the nature of their discontent is I wouldn't believe that a witch would say that.
Yeah.
It's not just it's poor dialogue. It's just I am no longer immersed as a result of this far too hip dialogue.
When I was a kid, the scariest thing in any movie for me that I could not watch was when the slippers disappear off the corpse of the dead witch.
Oh, and
the feet curl up. That Tim Burton shit. Like, what are you doing?
That
like
was
with
some
like
real
the
dark shit.
the lined stockings and everything.
Yeah.
Like, I could not watch it. And it really is. There is so much of this movie, going back and watching it again, that is 100%. Like, on social media right now, you can't say death or you have to say like unalive. And there's all of this like, phrasing to avoid triggering people. All the Wizard of Oz is she murders somebody and the Munchkins are cheering about the deaths. They're running around with the death certificate. She's dead. You killed her. The witch comes out. You killed her. Yes, I killed her. And then later at the end, like, like, bring me the broomstick. Well, we can't do that unless we kill her. You'll have to kill her. Like,
yeah. The original cut of this movie. Well, first off, The Wizard of Oz is a book, way darker. Way darker.
I got that vibe a lot.
Yeah. I mean, listen, the Tin Man has an axe and he uses it. Like, let's leave it there.
Wow.
Like, there are killer bumblebees that attack them and they end up stinging each other to death when they go through the scarecrow. The wizard is very explicit about like, I'm not looking for the broomstick. You gotta murder that woman. Like he is clear. Like you gotta kill her. That's the way you get home is if you kill that witch. But yeah, I do know that like the production of this movie was a constant back and forth of like, can we show this to kids? Can we like is this too dark? Like the skywriting scene where it says surrender Dorothy was originally had the line or die at the end of it. And they cut that part. Like it just became surrender Dorothy because they didn't want to freak kids out. Like so it was a constant battle of is this too far for a children's movie? Which when you think of like 1939 sensibilities. It's amazing that it's even watchable for kids these days.
Yeah.
It's pretty incredible because, like you said, the curling shit. Like, there's some freaky stuff in this movie.
But I think that's that cocktail of some stuff that's slightly over the line. Like I've always been confused that Scarecrow has a gun. That he's walking through the desert, he's walking through the woods, and he's holding a pistol, and he doesn't know what he's doing, you know. But like, there are little moments that are.
I mean, that's the character you want to be holding a gun, the one who has no brain. That's
you know,
that's the guy you want to give a firearm to.
Definitely not the one who's metal, who is very sturdy and not going to move, you know. But like that cocktail of good for kids, good for kids, good for kids, something that's slightly on the line. Good for kids, good for kids, something that's slightly on the line. All it would have taken was one thing that went too far for this movie to maybe kind of fall into obscurity. But the fact that there was enough for enough generations to follow where now we all kind of accept that it's just like you're saying, like the implication of the huntsman's axe, the Tin Man's axe, like there's the darkness of the trees throwing the apples. It's fucking crazy. Like there's some dark shit. The monkeys are terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. The moment at the end when she gets the water thrown on her, which Shyamalan totally ripped off for Signs, like it goes on. It's just one wide shot of her slowly melting, everybody watching in real time as this creature.
Yeah, nobody does anything.
Yeah,
everyone just kind of stands there as she is in agony for about
pure agony.
20 seconds, I feel like it lasts in the
going.
Actual movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
She's panicking. Yeah.
Like, all right.
Yeah. You're watching like body horror, like she's like literally dissolving, you know, for a kid. That's a lot. Same review who just said stinkaroo.
Oh, stinkaroo.
The vulgarity of which I was conscious all throughout the film is difficult to analyze. Part of it was the raw, eye-straining Technicolor, applied with a complete...
Oh, fuck
you know, first time I've ever seen it. Not a fan.
Yeah, mind-blowing color technology. Oh, it hurts my eyes. Like... Oh, what am I looking at? Get it away from me.
This would be like the guy who's like in heaven complaining, you know, like the clouds are really bright. Like, come on, guys. Like, dude, come on. Part of it was the raw, eye-straining Technicolor applied with a complete lack of restraint. And the gags, exclamation point. Let me give you just one. Dorothy is telling, here comes another line that he didn't like. Dorothy is telling the wizard about the fate of the Wicked Witch. She just melted away, Dorothy says. Liquidated, eh? The wizard comes back quick as a flash. He's a card, that wizard. You ought to hear him ribbing the boys in Dave's blue room some morning. Don't understand the reference?
What the hell?
But you're mad that the wizard had like a quip. Isn't that so specific?
Oh my God, that's
the whole movie is like, well, you ought to this. Well, if you do that, like that's what every movie is.
Yeah, it's lines, it's dialogue. It's also like you're in the 30s. That's how people talk.
Yeah.
Like,
do you watch a Marx Brothers?
People are famously quippy when they use that Mid-Atlantic accent.
Are you watching a Marx Brothers movie going like, you guys could all tone it down?
I don't appreciate the back and forth you guys are using these days.
It seems
it's a little too fast for me.
What is he? You said stinkaroo. you said it.
You said stinkaroo. You are equally to blame, sir.
Yeah. Bert Lahr as the Cowardly Lion is funny but out of place. If Bert Lahr belongs in the Land of Oz, so does Mae West. This is nothing against this is nothing against Lar or Miss West, both of whom I dearly love, but I don't like the singer. Let's say Little People didn't use that word under any circumstances, but I found them especially bothersome in Technicolor. Wow.
Whoa.
Wow.
Whoa.
So first of all, let's recap that paragraph. Bert Lahr was all right, but shouldn't have been in this movie. If he is in this movie, he should have also been next to Mae West, which is not a bad thing because I like them both.
Yeah.
Also,
which, by the way, that little line right there, I like them both, is the most Hollywood schmoozer, like Jiminy Glick bullshit I've ever heard. Just this, like, they're both close personal friends of mine.
Right.
I don't know if you guys know this, but I'm connected in Hollywood. But
also, there were Little People who were singing who I wouldn't like under any circumstances, is what he says. But I found them especially bothersome in Technicolor.
Oh, physically cringing at that. Physically makes me uncomfortable.
If you're a good person
say something,
and you were reading this review up to this point, if you got to this point, you almost have to like go see the movie just to spite him because of how horrible that last line is.
I mean, I was a little worried when you said we were going to do a movie from 1939.
Yeah.
What we were going to see.
Yeah.
I'm not surprised, but I'm still disappointed.
Yeah.
What an awful thing to say about another group of people who, by the way, knock it out of the park in this movie.
100% knock it out of the park.
It's, it's a phenomenal sequence. It's a great scene. It's probably the thing people think when I think of the Wizard of Oz. The first thing I picture is her walking out into Munchkinland.
Yeah,
like and that is in large part due to the performance of the Munchkins, who absolutely are wall to wall. What a fun scene. There's so much going on, the movement, it's an old Hollywood production. Like it's theatrical.
This is The New Republic, September 24th, 1939. The Wizard of Oz was intended to hit the same audience as Snow White and won't fail for lack of trying. It has dwarfs, music, Technicolor, freak characters, and Judy Garland.
I don't want to know what they mean by freak characters.
I don't want to know what they mean by putting Judy Garland at the end. It can't be expected to have a sense of humor as well, and as for the light touch of fantasy, it weighs like a pound of fruitcake soaking wet. You know how this movie has a light touch of fantasy. It's a very light touch of fantasy, this movie. And it doesn't have a sense of humor, apparently.
No, there's no levity to this movie.
There's no levity. Children will not object to it, especially as it is a thing of many interesting gadgets, but it will be delightful for children, mostly to their mothers, and any kid tall enough to reach up to that ticket window will be found at the Tarzan film down the street. In this sentence, you've got all the greatest hits. It's not funny. It only has a light touch of fantasy, and anybody old enough to buy a ticket for it won't want to see it.
Light touch of fantasy is making me madder and madder the more you say it. She befriends a talking scarecrow, man made of steel, and a literal lion as they walk down a golden road to a city made out of emerald gems
to go after a witch,
to meet a wizard, to kill a witch.
Light touch of fantasy weighs like a pound of fruitcake soaking wet. The most 1930s.
That's so 1930s.
That's
That's such an old reference.
Although it is also so lofty, I can imagine a reviewer in the 70s, 80s, or 90s using it because they were so detached from culture as well. These reviewers that we've read for these more recent movies where they're just like, It hangs in the air like a turnip. It's like, okay, dude, you know, like easy, man. The story, of course, has some lovely and wild ideas: men of straw and tin, a cowardly lion, a wizard who isn't a very good wizard. But the picture doesn't know what to do with them, except to be painfully literal and elaborate about everything. Cecil B. DeMille and the 7,000 Dwarves by actual count. Yeah, it's the Wizard of Oz. It's gonna be literal. It's a children's movie.
And also, like, to that point, it's a children's movie. It's important. There is a certain, like, I think it matters to be fair to a children's movie in terms of, like, there's a certain level of explicitness that is needed for a children's movie that isn't necessarily. You can have a lot more subtlety in a movie that is clearly geared for adults, the way this is not. I think it helps this movie that each time a new character excuse me, each time a new character is presented, their goals and objectives and their key to personal growth is very clear. I need a brain, I need a heart, I need courage. And Dorothy, obviously, I need to find a way home. That helps a child understand what they're doing, where they're going, and why they're doing it, why they're all together. It misses the point of the movie to knock it for being explicit for that, because it's designed to explain these kinds of goals to a kid so that they can see the growth.
It's nice to know that even back in 1939, movie reviewers completely assumed that this'll be an aesthetic for me. This movie will achieve everything and do everything that I want it to. And there's no compartmentalization of, I'm going to see a kid's movie, so let me write the review from the perspective of, does it succeed as the story of the Wizard of Oz? Yes. Great. Yeah. Now let's talk about the rest. But like the fact that it's just like, way to be blunt. I need a brain, I need a heart, I need courage, I need a refund. Like, what are you talking about? Here's the end. The things I liked best were the design for the witch's castle and the air raid of the things with wings, the control room in which Frank Morgan is discovered controlling the light and sound effects that make the wizard.
I also love the Wizard of Oz. The actual wizard is one of my favorite characters in any movie. Not to inundate everybody with trivia facts, but they were trying to find the costume for him. They kept looking for a certain kind of, they wanted him to look kind of shabby, but also like at some point he was a, gentleman kind of look. I think the the phrase that they described with the coat that they wanted for it was like this shabby gentility is kind of the ideal coat. So they went all over Hollywood trying to find this coat. They bought like hundreds of coats from the rack from Goodwill, found a coat that was perfect. And they checked the inside liner, and it's a bespoke coat that was made for, it had the name of the person who it was made for in it. And it was L. Frank Baum, the writer of Wizard of Oz.
That is such an insane, like, that's one of those that could absolutely be true, but because it's so old Hollywood, like,
it's you don't buy it.
Amazing. It's like, John Wilkes Booth's son was best friends with Lincoln's son. Like, kind of, like, it's one of those where you're just like, no. My brain can't.
Yeah. So apparently they checked with his widow, who confirmed that it was one of his coats.
Absolutely crazy.
And they gave it to her at the end of production. I don't know if everybody does this, but in movies like this, especially very old movies, I like to recast them in my head with today's people. Just to see, like, if I got in charge of making this movie today and money were no object, who would? And the wizard is always one that I like toss around a bunch of different people.
Who would you cast?
Do you have someone in mind?
Yeah.
Okay, let's say on 3.
All right,
ready? One, two, three.
Brian Cox.
Donald Sutherland. Oh, interesting.
Donald Sutherland's a great choice. I picked Brian Cox because, in the last few decades, he's only played absolute assholes.
Yeah.
But I think when he smiles, there's so much light behind the eyes,
Mm-hmm.
and
He could do it. A warmth there. Yeah.
he could be that huckster, but also,
Yeah.
Donald
I,
Sutherland. That's great.
I like Donald Sutherland because I like him as I think it would be a good contrast to him in Hunger Games is kind of what made me think of it.
Yeah.
And he's kind of been my fixed point for a while in that character. I have another one that I feel like is a little more controversial, but if we're going to go a completely different direction,
Yeah.
Jake Johnson, the guy who voices Spider-Man
Oh
in
yeah.
the new animated movies. He's also in New Girl. If we're going to go like young with it, because I
Mm-hmm.
really like him as kind of like this like magician in a caravan kind of
Yeah.
look. Like I think he can pull off that kind of the non-wizard of when he's what's the character's name? Oh god. Professor Marvel.
Mm-hmm.
Which by the
Mm-hmm.
way sounds like a comic book character. But I think that he'd be great.
What if you did like a young Wizard of Oz and you cast someone like James Franco and you went
I mean, that's a no-brainer.
You went boring and like you don't do the writing, you don't do good effects, and you have the movie be like completely forgettable. Huh?
I'm on board as long as JD from Scrubs can be a monkey in it. That's the hill I'm dying on.
Here's the last line. Morgan, Frank Morgan, is in fact the only unaffected trooper in the bunch. The rest either try too hard or are Judy Garland.
Oh, shut up. Oh, I hate that.
It isn't that this little slip of a miss spoils the fantasy so much as that her thumping, overgrown gambles are characteristic of its treatment here. When she is merry, the house shakes, and everybody gets wet when she is lorn. So, like, basically saying she's chewing the scenery.
Mm-hmm.
As we've discussed, not at all. You want to look at like what kid actors up until the modern day, how little effort they put into things. What she is doing is absolutely 100% what the part is asking for, and more so.
Yeah,
she's crushing it.
It's literally called like it's Oz is Wonderland. Oz is fantasy. Oz is a place where a child that is put there is going to go, what? Like, what?
Yeah.
Like, there is going to be big reactions to things as she's by herself trying to figure this out. And like, the closest person she has to a grounding reality is a talking fucking scarecrow. so like, the character calls for a little bit of bigness to it. She crushes this movie, as does, the character actors who play the rest of the ensemble.
Again, it's literally just a reviewer going, not my sensibility, not exactly what I was hoping for. There's no consideration what this movie is setting out to do. Does it achieve that at all? It's just, it absolutely blows my mind. So is your mind changed though? Like after all of this?
No, I still think that it's movie,
not a stinkeroo.
Yeah, it's not a stinkeroo. I think this movie rightfully is timeless.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's fantastic. It's not the first movie I put on, but I think it's required viewing if you're interested in movies at all, obviously. I think it's the kind of and it goes to show that like people who are not interested in film, like people who never watch movies have seen this movie. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just you are exposed to it by osmosis, and that's for very good reason. I think it's a phenomenal film.
On the subject of the coat and everything, have you ever in person seen one of the Ruby Slippers sets?
I did when I was a kid. I was probably like 9 or 10 years old. I did a trip down to DC to the Smithsonian where it was kept. Yeah. And I'll be honest, as a 9-year-old, I was far more interested in seeing Kermit the Frog. But I do remember seeing it, and I remember somebody there saying that like the carpet in front of it has to get replaced every year or so because it's the single like most viewed thing
Yeah.
in the entire like film and television Smithsonian or wherever it is, Museum of like Americana, whatever it is.
And there's always those stories of like how many of them they made, like like 2 pairs are lost. One was found in like, you know, someone's attic, you know, the others like it's, I love the stories of like, I'm crazy about movie props. I don't know why, but I fall, like I really fall for like, this was a physical thing that was used to in part of this beautiful creation of this thing that has,
it's very fun.
Everybody has looked at. For you, knowing that like the ruby slippers are like the top movie prop, if you could have any movie prop in history,
gosh,
and you also get, let's just throw this out there, you get housing, you know, hermetically sealed, however it is that you need to display it, that's also included.
The first thing that came to mind without even thinking about it was the ring from Lord of the Rings.
Nice. Yeah.
That would be incredible. That would be a cool one. Oh gosh, you put me on the spot. Do you have one?
Yeah. I mean,
do you have one in mind?
The Grail Diary from Last Crusade.
Oh, that's pretty great. I mean, that's an excellent choice.
Opened to the, you know, the stainless steel, the stained glass thing with the Roman numerals. I mean, that would be, yeah. I know there's like facsimiles that people have made, but no, I want the OG.
You want the OG.
When I went to Venice, I walked, because it's one continuous path when they get off the gondola and walk to the converted church for that scene. I recreated that exact walking path to get to that spot. That was the first thing we did when I got to Venice for my honeymoon, was like, honey, you're following me. We're doing this walk. Walking to do this. Yeah.
Do you go into a church and just start smashing the tiles on the
ground? I walked up.
Sir, what are you doing? Not now.
Okay, so here are my 3 reviews. 2 reviews and a lie.
Let's do it,
Here
buddy.
Are 3 1-star reviews from IMDb for Wizard of Oz. 2 of them are real. 1 of them I made up. Which one of these did I come up with? This is just one of those old movies that are low budget. It has a nice story, but there's eye catchers or cliffhangers. Nothing interesting. It's like, what the heck am I watching? It so slow, bad acting, and cheesy. 1 out of 10.
Okay.
Number 2. My son is terrified of Wizard of Oz. He screamed when the trees throw the apples. He screamed at the monkeys, and he screamed when they kill the witch. Traumatizing and nauseating. 1 out of 10. That's number 2. Okay. Number 3. The Wizard of Oz is great. My favorite thing about it is the color change from Kansas to Oz. I always thought that the Scarecrow had a crush on Dorothy. I also love the little guy who follows Dorothy into Oz from her home, Toto. If you've never seen this movie, you really have to. It's definitely a must-see. 1 out of 10. Very clearly somebody did not know how to press the right button.
Didn't know, or thought like, well, I would rank it first out of 10 movies.
First out of 10 movies. This is the one that I would watch.
Okay. Oh God, if you did that to me, that would be some sinister shit. I can't believe you would.
We got to change it up.
I know. Are you that devious? I wonder. See, I'm torn between 1 and 2 only because the first one I feel like has some typo red herrings. Yeah. That's a smart move I'm learning. We need to incorporate terrible grammar in these reviews.
But the second one is like, why would you just talk about those things?
Yeah,
like,
just those things.
You know?
And also, I don't mean to be judgmental here, but I'd be surprised to hear somebody use the word nauseating in a review.
Good point. Yeah. Also traumatizing.
Traumatizing and nauseating. I'm going to go with number 2.
You get a point. That's the one I wrote.
Hell yeah.
A real person said, this is just one of those old movies that are low budget. It has a nice story. It has a nice story, but there's eye catchers or cliffhangers.
Yeah, like it has a nice story, but as a counterpoint, it also has cliffhangers. So
and eye catchers, don't forget the eye catchers.
Oh, and eye catchers.
Eye catchers or cliffhangers.
Or
yeah, it has a nice story, but there's
who's to say which one it has?
I love it so much. There's art to this. Oh my God. Well,
I think I will say, to your credit, we are getting, I think as a class, we are all improving in terms of writing awful reviews.
Yeah. It's about finding 3 different kinds of crazy and then asking you which one, because it's tough.
There are also, I do get inspiration from a few of them where somebody says something like the review isn't bad enough, but they take an idea where I'm like, oh, that's something that I can work that in. But I liked, the trees throwing apples. That feels like something people are like, why did they do that?
I don't understand this one specific scene. Yeah. All right. Well, that's been The Wizard of Oz. Give us a like on Apple Podcasts. Like, share, subscribe so you don't miss an episode. I'm Dave Columbo. I'm all over social media. Dave Columbo on TikTok, at DVD Columbo on Instagram. Leave us a comment on any of my socials with your own terrible review for any of the movies that we've covered, and we'll read it out on the next show. What movies you think we should do next. Any parting words for us here tonight?
There's no place like home, ladies and gents. Everybody have a great night. Everybody have a great day. Everybody enjoy themselves.
Hopefully your day is not a stinkaroo.
Goodbye,
This has been Off the Mark.